Adventures in Retouching with Rob DiCaterino.
Welcome to Adventures in Retouching. I'm Rob DiCaterino, and today's guest is my colleague and friend, fellow retoucher, Katie Anderson. Hello and welcome.
Hi.
Thank you for doing this. I'm here in New Jersey. Where are you, Katie?
I'm currently also in New Jersey.
All right, so we're together in New Jersey, and let's just jump right in. So we'll have our conversation and help inform the world about what we do and what retouching is, and just explore the world of retouching.
Yeah.
So let's start out. If you can walk me through your background. If you just take a couple minutes and let's just walk through your background.
So I don't have a huge background in photo retouching. I have an undergraduate degree in illustration and animation. And then getting into retouching was just, I had a friend who was working as a video producer at Net-a-Porter. So it all kind of started as a joke of, hey, wouldn't it be fun to like work together? And so I applied and I was like, I have all of this experience in Photoshop. I've done a lot of like editing images for like my graphic design projects. And so I thought it'd be fun to try to expand on that. And then I worked in the industry for 4 years at Net-a-Porter, and then ended up going back to school now to go back for concept art for video games. And I'm still doing some photo retouching on the side, but it's just not as big of a part of my life as it was before.
Okay, so what would you say is a big part of your life?
So right now it's a lot of drawing.
Okay.
I haven't gotten to it quite yet, but I'm really looking forward to working on some photo bashing, which I think is going to be really helpful with my photo retouching background, because I have all the experience like matching lighting and color. And so doing that was really going to help push my illustrations forward. So it's fun being able to take something that I did as a job for 4 years and actually merge it with what I want to do in the future.
Now, when your friend and colleague half jokingly suggested to you, why don't you come work with me and be a retoucher, what went through your mind, and did you even know that that was a thing?
I had no idea that was really a job at first. So it was kind of an interesting thing of looking back on my work from school and seeing, oh, I actually do have a lot of experience working with like editing and manipulating photos. It's maybe not up to like what I'd be doing as a photo retoucher for like an e-commerce fashion website, but I was like, oh, hey, I've done a lot of like working with changing colors of images and like cropping things, resizing things, doing a lot of the basic work that you need for the foundation of photo retouching. And so it was kind of cool to see, oh, hey, I can take all this work from my illustration degree and I can apply it to something else instead of just going into like an illustration career. This actually isn't as far out as I thought it might have been when we were first joking around about it.
What did you find that maybe attracted you to the idea?
Well, a paycheck was a really good first step coming out of college. But I thought it would be, I really wanted to just learn and keep growing my skills after I graduated. And it was something where there was just so much out there. It was hard to figure out where I wanted to go and where I wanted to take my skills. And so I think that was really the enticing part of going into photo retouching once I started like looking into it more. And it was like, oh, this could be something I could actually do that would still be a creative job that I can work in and gain a lot of experience in. It's a fun career path to have. You get to do a lot of different stuff. I mean, especially at Net-a-Porter, I got to work on like doing different clothing brands. I got to do like accessories and beauty products. I got to do some stuff for like social media. So I think there was definitely a lot more creativity and a lot more areas to work on than I thought when I first got into it. And so I think a really big part of it was like there's just so much to learn, which was really a lot of fun. And leaving my undergrad, it was like, I don't want to learn anymore. I don't want to take classes anymore. I just don't want to think right now. You're so burnt out. But then getting back into doing like workshops and like learning from all my peers and just like attending different like meetings with people, learning new skills, it really got me back into like wanting to learn more, especially being in a profession where there was so much to learn for me. So that kind of was the catalyst of me wanting to end up going back to school.
Right.
So it was something that was a lot of fun, and there's always new things to learn. I mean, even after 4 years, I was still, you can always learn from people who you start working with, even if they have less experience than you, just because there's so many different ways to work in Photoshop and to do each thing. It's just an always growing industry. There's always new things to learn, new things to try, new projects to work on. So
By the way, of course, as soon as I sit out here and try to record, there's like, I'm hearing 5 different landscapers all of a sudden now start using chainsaws. So can you hear it, or is it okay?
I can hear it a little bit, but it's not too bad on my end.
So your friend is at Net-a-Porter
Yes.
in New Jersey,
Mhm.
the middle of the forest in New Jersey. So you and I was the manager there. So you sent me your resume, and I called you in. Can you just walk me through your version of like how you got the job and your learning and your training and how you felt through that process?
I think through the process, it was a lot of anxiety. It was like really my first like big job interview, and it's something I didn't totally feel qualified for. A big part of what helped me through all that interview and stuff was actually you. You saw that I was willing to learn. And I think that's something that's always really stuck with me even now, is like the biggest thing isn't that you come into a job with all the skills you need. It's that you come in with a base and a willingness to learn. But yeah, I think the interview process was really great with you, because it was a lot of like, you can go through and see where you're at, and then you were always great with giving like feedback on how you did on the initial test. Because I feel like sometimes you go into an interview and you just have no clue how you've done, and you get no feedback, and sometimes you don't even get an answer. And so getting like feedback right there at the interview was a really awesome experience to start off with. And that was part of the reason that really made me want to work there, was that I wanted to grow and I wanted to learn all these new skills. And you seemed really like, yes, learning.
Yeah. That is my approach and my mentality. I will admit that part of what you're so first of all, thank you for your kind words, and I'm very honored about that. But part of the challenge of working at that company in Mahwah, New Jersey, is we were in the middle of the forest. The commute from New York, I mean, look, it's retouching, it's photography. A lot of the talent is New York City, and getting people to commute from New York City to Mahwah, New Jersey, it just was not realistic. A few people did it, but
I don't know how they did it.
and the vast majority just weren't going to do it. So I had to be realistic and say, number one, it's junior level position. So I can't expect someone coming in with 10 years of experience, being a wizard, and that's just not the role.
Mm-hmm.
So finding people who were the right level in that location. But also what helped is getting referrals from respected teammates.
Yeah.
So if you had maybe if you had applied, I would have seen the potential on your resume and called you in, and we would have gone from there. But I admit, maybe not, I don't know. But the fact that I did get the referral from a very valued teammate, it helped. So yeah, and also I'm the kind of person that I did want to approach that. Again, I have to be realistic, I have to be open-minded, and I have to see the potential because of the role, because of the location, and the challenges with commute, the challenges with finding talent. I made a decision to keep an open mind and see the potential in people. And if, number one, if I get a referral from someone who I trust, number two, even if I don't, if I see a nicely put together resume, a nicely designed resume, a nice website, and work that and I know this is subjective, but work that shows a certain taste level. What do I mean by that? Well, if your website looks like it was a 1995 GeoCities or Angel Fire website. It's going to sound like I'm being a jerk, but it's like that's not in line with luxury fashion and that type of
Yeah,
aesthetic.
it's about tailoring yourself to what you're applying for.
So Katie, can you walk us through what is your setup? What equipment do you use? What are your go-to tools, software?
I have like a Mac laptop, and then I have a Wacom Intuos Medium. That was my first setup that I got when I was an undergrad for doing drawing, and that translated into like my photo retouching. Recently I've started getting into iPad stuff. A lot of it is because being in graduate school out in San Francisco, I'm always like out and about. And as much as I would love to lug around my laptop and my drawing tablet, it just wasn't feasible. So all of those I'm working in Photoshop. I'm experimenting in Procreate. I did try out like one of the, I didn't go for like the Cintiq, like the drawing on the screen, the monitor one. I went for a very cheap off-brand one to try it out. And that just didn't feel for me right for doing photo retouching. I felt like you're just too close to it to be able to really be editing things on like a large scale. So yeah, I really prefer having like the drawing tablet instead of drawing on the screen. I've been playing around with Affinity Photo, which is, it seems to me, a pretty good substitute for Photoshop. It's a one-time payment instead of the like monthly Creative Suite stuff, which was a really big perk for me.
Yeah.
It has a lot of the features that Photoshop does, and it's compatible with Photoshop. So if I was ever in Affinity and I was like, I don't know how to do this in this program, I just need to get this done quick, I can convert it quickly into Photoshop and edit it in there. Photoshop's pretty much my go-to.
Okay. How did you find working in Affinity so far?
I really like it. It's one of those things where it's difficult to move from one program to another because like Photoshop, I've worked in it for years and I've put so many hours into it. It's like I know exactly what tools I want to use and like how I can get things done quickly. So switching to a new program is difficult because sometimes it feels clunkier than it actually is because you're so used to doing it one way. And then trying to adapt it, it's like, well, I want to play around in this, but I also need to get this project done. So I've been playing around in it some. I like it a lot on the iPad because Photoshop on the iPad is not there. But Affinity Photo has a lot more options and a lot more tools than Photoshop does on the iPad. So I really have been liking using Affinity on the iPad because like it has a lot of the stuff that Procreate and Photoshop have, and it has both of them in one program.
Now in Photoshop, what are your go-to tools?
In terms of photo retouching, pen tool is a huge one. Actually, before I started doing photo retouching, I had very minimal experience with the pen tool, and I have like hundreds, if not thousands of hours in the pen tool now. It's definitely become one of the most important tools that I use for just everything. Makes it really easy to make selections, to put things on new layers, to use masks, which are great for both photo retouching and for drawing. If you just want to edit one thing, you can just quick pen tool it and just edit that, which is really helpful. I do a lot of brush tool. Stamp tool is one of my favorites for doing photo retouching. I know in terms of like color editing, I really like using HueSat and Levels.
This might be a weird question, but what does retouching mean for you? What is retouching?
For me, it's a lot about creativity with images. It's a lot of taking something that like a photographer saw or a stylist saw and taking it to a next level you can't actually get to in reality.
How have you evolved as a retoucher, and what has helped you evolve? What has helped you progress as a retoucher?
A big part of that, big part of evolving has definitely been working with so many people. That was part of the perk of being in such a big studio, is I got to work with and learn from like 20, 30 people at a time. I know it's really easy to be like, well, this is the way I do it. This is the best way I can do it. So I'm going to stick with this. And I think it's a really easy trap to fall into, especially in a field that's so much about creativity and like our tools are constantly evolving.
Do you ever look back at your earlier work and just compare to how you are now? And if so, how do you feel about when you look back at your earlier work?
I don't know if I look back on my earlier work as much, but I know that I've definitely gotten like a lot faster at figuring out what problems are in my own work. That was a big part of doing e-commerce, is being able to quickly pick out issues that need to be resolved and figuring out the best way to resolve them, which I think is a big part of not just photo retouching, but any creative job that you're in, is being able to, when you're looking at an image and something bothers you, like it's important to be able to quickly be like, this is what's bothering me. This is what I need to work on.
I agree. Yeah, being able to you pull up a photo or a set of photos and be able to very quickly assess and identify what exactly I need to focus on in this image. And yeah, that's very important and
Yeah.
valuable.
And it's a very translatable skill as well. You know, it's something like when you're putting up like your portfolio and you're looking at your portfolio as a whole, being able to quickly see, this is the image that stands out for some reason, this is the image I need to work on, this one doesn't fit in this set. It's a really just a good skill to have, especially
So,
like it also translates again to my illustrations.
mhm.
It's nice to be able to be like, oh, this color doesn't look quite right. And it was something, all of the color matching especially, we had to do as a photo retoucher. It's something that takes a lot of time to build up those skills. um, it takes a long time to be able to look at an image and be like, this is the color I need to pick out to edit with, and it's a lot of trial and error at first especially. But it's something I had to do this past semester. We were doing like photo studies, and I know I was able to do it a lot faster and a lot more precisely, picking out like the undertone colors of an image and being able to color match without having to color pick from the original image. And that's something that doing all the photo retouching really gave me the skill to do.
Yeah, a big part of the job is having color become second nature.
Mhm.
I'll use myself as an example. When I was first starting out, if I were in a situation like that, okay, let me play around. Right, the word
Yeah.
play around, the phrase play around, and really, if you want to be a good, effective, successful retoucher, there's no playing around. You know, right? You know exactly. Okay, I'm assessing. I'm identifying. The shoe is too cyan, the shoe is too magenta, the shoe is too green, the shoe needs a little more saturation. This area of the shoe is a little too orange, it needs to be a little more blue, and just being able to make those quick assessments, those quick judgments, that's how you become an efficient, good, successful, effective retoucher.
Yeah.
Katie, what's your favorite type of retouching?
I really like editing people more than like still lives. I think I like being able to like go into the skin and not necessarily like remove all the imperfections, but like seeing where I can add things. And being able to just like tweak a photo, like edit how the hair looks. It's really nice to be able to get that satisfaction of like giving someone a good hair day, even if they didn't necessarily have it on set, which seems like such a silly thing, but it editing hair takes so much time, and it's something that I enjoy doing because you can get really good results afterwards. Especially like someone with, I have like long, like my hair is always has flyaways, and so to be able to look at a photo like that and fix it is really fun for me.
That's good. Yeah, and that brings me into another question, because you're mentioning giving someone a good hair day. What are your thoughts about over retouching, and what is the line between, I'm going to put in quotes, good retouching versus dangerous retouching?
at least in my experience, when you're first starting out with retouching, it's like something feels good about like getting rid of every single imperfection and making something look perfectly smooth. It just feels really like, yes, I did this. And then I think it's when you look back on those images later, you realize, oh, I overdid this. This isn't like realistic as it should be. That's my personal experience with it, because I know when I was first editing faces, it was like, oh, I'm going to get rid of every single blemish and get rid of like all of this because it feels good to remove that. You feel like you're making the image better. And then I think it's after time goes by and you look at those, you realize I wasn't necessarily making it better. I was removing what makes this person this person. So like sometimes, especially with a lot of the retouching with like adjusting people's figures, I think there's a time and a place for it, because especially in an e-commerce setting, you don't always have the correct size for a model. There's just no way you're going to get hundreds of garments in the perfect size every time. So I think being able to, like, if the clothing is too tight, then you can adjust the figure, because that's not the actual figure's figure. You want the images to be interesting, and I feel like removing every single imperfection removes some of that interest in the image.
What are the things that you like best about retouching, or that just again, as a practical working retoucher, especially in e-com, it's very fast-paced, efficiency. What are some of the things you like and that make your life easier as a retoucher?
Action sets. So being able to, once you figure out a bit more of like your workflow and what, like, this is what I need to take this image from like point A to point B for this situation, it's really helpful to set up actions to do that. Like actions in Photoshop were something I had no experience with before starting to work in photo retouching. And so being able to be like, okay, I know for this type of image, I'm going to like duplicate this. I know I want to do this exact editing every time. So being able to use an action set to like make things go quicker was really helpful. And it took out a lot of the monotony of doing the photo retouching. So you could focus more on like the fun stuff with it.
Again, just like with mastering color and the pen tool and a Wacom tablet,
Yeah.
actions too. Actions is a big one, because anything, right? What did I used to say when we were at Net-a-Porter together? What I always use, well, one of the things that I would always say is, if you find yourself doing the same thing to multiple images throughout the day, record it and automate it. And this way you just push one button and that can eliminate 5 steps. And okay, but now I have to make a levels adjustment layer. I go in or I make a hue saturation adjustment layer. I desaturate the background because we want all the backgrounds to be consistent. Automate it, make an action.
You're not letting the actions do the job for you. You're letting the actions take out parts of the job that you don't need to do and that don't necessarily require the skill to do it 100 times a day. Like every time you open an image, if you like duplicate the background layer, you want to like add a group, you want to add a levels, you know you're going to need those, then doing an action for it is just going to save you time and let you actually do your job rather than do Photoshop's job.
Right, exactly. Yeah, it's a great way to put it. That's a great way to put it. So now the opposite. What are things that you like least about retouching, and or some things that make the job harder or are blockers?
One of the biggest blockers for me is working with people who don't know what you can do in Photoshop. Because I know in my experience, we have a lot of times where it's like, oh, can you just do this? And it's like, nope, I can't just push a button and do that. I know sometimes I've gotten like, oh, can you just like turn her head some? And I'm like, that's not how a photo works. I can't just turn her head for you. So I think that was always a big blocker of just having people realize what you can do. I know sometimes I would be on set and they'd be sitting around like trying to get the right like lip color for something, and I'm like, guys, I can do that in Photoshop for you. Like,
Right. Like, yeah, like that's something that we can do.
yeah,
Get the head right, get the pose correct, get the head right. Again, especially in e-com where it's so fast paced. Does an e-com retoucher have the luxury of sitting at the desk all day, Frankensteining together? Oh, this arm from this capture, this head from this capture, this. No, this is not editorial, slow paced marketing, advertising retouching. This is boom, 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 e-com retouching. Get the pose correct on set, get the head and we can change the lip color.
yeah,
But in your experience, a lot of times because people on set might not have that expertise, right, that post-production expertise, they're dwelling on the wrong things, it sounds.
yeah. It's sometimes it's just misunderstandings. Oftentimes it's they think, oh, well, you did this one time, so you can do this to this image, and it's like it doesn't work on this image for these reasons. You know, it's like the same thing when you're on set, like working with different fabrics. Like this worked for this fabric, but this won't work for this type of fabric. And so I think a lot of it is working with other people is so important in projects where you have so many different steps and so many different people with different skill sets. I think getting a better understanding of what they can do is really important to getting like the best image. The end goal is to get the best image you can. And so I think an important part is knowing what your other teammates can do to help you get to that best image.
If you were, let's pretend, if you're hiring a junior retoucher, what are things that you would look for on a resume and on the website, the portfolio?
I think in terms of photo retouching, it would be good to show like a before and after, at least a like a step thing to show like this is where it came from before. Like these are the steps I took to get it to where it is. Even if you don't have a lot of like fashion experience, try to find projects that can relate to where you're applying to. It's showing that you can apply what you know to the job you're applying to.
Do you have any good or funny memories or anecdotes that you could share from your experience as a retoucher?
Like ultimately what makes the job a good job is the people. It doesn't matter what kind of work you're doing. You want to be able to work with people, which is an important part of like the application process. Like doing the in-person meetings, it's about a big part of it is seeing if your personality fits with the team, which I think is something that a lot of people don't necessarily think about before they go into an interview. It's like, oh, but I have the skills. And it's like, yeah, but if you're not going to necessarily get along with the people already in the studio, that can really affect your chances of getting a job. Which I know went a little off track there from good memories, but
Well,
I
good.
just feel like it's an important part because, you know, you want to be able to like the people that you're working with. You want to be able to hang out with them. Like in a studio setting, you're working next to these people for like 8 hours a day. So you want to be able to chat with them and like, you want to be able to have fun.
That's a good point. Part of being a successful retoucher is, of course, like you're saying, having the actual the hard skills, right? So this program, the application, the tablet, the pen tool, all of those hard skills, but also the soft skills, the people skills, because like you said, it is such a close collaboration, not only within the team, but across teams. So
Yes.
you're working elbow to elbow with other retouchers, but also jumping on set, talking with photographers, with stylists, with writers, with production people,
Hmm.
and the merch people.
There's a
so
lot
so
of
that
people involved in the process that
yes,
you don't necessarily think of.
yeah. I mean, taking a photo of a shirt, there's a lot. But for someone like I, before I had experience, like okay, you hang, you put up the shirt, you take a picture, and you're done. It's like, well, no, because there's so much the lighting, and there's the return of the shirt. How are we going to approach returns? And and comping that together, and lighting and styling and pins versus lay downs versus
Yeah.
there's so much. And like you said before, the sizing and talking to the merch people, getting the right size, and then that all because the retouchers are the last step in the process. All of the decisions and approaches that happened before gets to retouching, you're going to have to deal with it as the retoucher. So it is that very close collaboration to make sure the retoucher gets the right raw materials that the retoucher needs to do the job correctly.
Yeah. Which is
So,
funny
yeah,
because it's not necessarily something you think about in this line of work. You know, it's like, oh, I just sit at my computer and I edit photos. And I think
yeah,
that was part of my impression of what it was going to be before I got in the industry. And it's like, oh, no, I'm talking with a lot of people every day.
yeah. How did you feel about that?
I mean, at first, it was definitely a bit overwhelming, you know, coming into a new studio where you have so many teammates and it's like, okay, I have my team I work with. And then you actually realize that you need to work with like 100 people and you need to be not necessarily best friends with all of them, but you need to be able to be like, okay, I know this person, I can go talk to them. I have a vague idea of how they work. Like I know we had a lot on our team where it'd be like, so you got to the point where you could look at an image and then be like, oh, I know who shot this because I know exactly how like this is set up and stuff. So it really is a really collaborative industry.
A lot of studios where I've worked and the studio where you worked, we did have the luxury that we were all together in one big studio. So we did have the luxury. We had the luxury of being able to go on set, walk up to a photographer, a stylist walk over to us, a merch person walk over to us, and have those direct conversations and those relationships and bonds. But some studios aren't like that. Some studios, oh, this was shot a week ago over at Studio X, and now we're the retouchers over in our own retouching company. And
That is very
so
true. Yeah.
so yeah, some again, just making people aware and painting a realistic picture. Some studios, you're all together, you're all working hard together, having fun together, collaborating, arguing, and no, we put the light here, but then if I put it there. But then some retouching environments, it's like, that was shot a week ago, it's done, here's your images, make it work. And so and you do, and we find ways to make it work, and we do our best. And so there are different environments out there as well. I like being able to collaborate and having that luxury of the real-time collaboration. I like that. So to go back, hey, we're going to circle back to the beginning. It comes full circle. So what do you envision for your future? Do you ever go back to retouching? Do you pivot forever? And you know, and it could be realistic, it could be like your ideal scenario, you know, dreams, or like just what do you envision for your career?
I think, I mean, ideally, I would love to get to concept work in a video game studio. So I know ideally I wouldn't be going back to full-time retouching. It's something I enjoy doing on the side and doing like freelance work for, just because it's something, it's a different way to flex like your creative muscles for me. Instead of doing like drawing and creating everything on my own from scratch, it's fun to start with a base of something and edit that into something else. And then I think it's going to be a really big part taking the skills that I learned as a photo retoucher and working those into doing like photo bashing and working into using those skills to edit lighting in my own work and stuff. So I think it's going to be a lot of just taking the skills I learned from here and applying it to where I'm going next.
What is it about video game concept art that you're so attracted to?
I really like creating a whole world from scratch, which like part of the appeal of doing photo retouching is that you have the base to start from and you're not starting from scratch with it. So I like doing the opposite in my own artwork. So like for my program, my final thesis project is basically creating characters in a story from the ground up. And it's something that I really, really love doing. So it's nice to be able to take inspiration from so many different places and combine them into my own kind of world and being able to show my own vision perfectly through my own drawings. I have an idea book that I think I'm up to about 700 or 800 just like random character and world ideas in. It all started, the notebook for ideas started about 2 years ago. So November is National Novel Writers Month. And so I have a lot of friends who are in like, they have like English degrees. They're working in like English type fields, like librarians and editors and stuff. And so they usually do, I think it's 50,000 words in the month of November. So it all kind of started from that. I had a friend doing that and I was like, I want to be able to like be doing this with you. So I was like, I'm going to come up with 500 ideas in the month of November. And so it kind of spawned from that of just, it's really fun to try to like flex your brain in a different way to come up with 500 unique ideas like that of being like, okay, what kind of like character archetype can I see here and how can I move that into a direction that I maybe haven't seen before, or something that I would really like to illustrate my own twist on it.
Anything else? Any other tidbits I didn't think of? Any final thoughts you want to add?
I think an important thing for people to know is just because you don't feel perfectly qualified for it doesn't mean you shouldn't go for it. As long as you have like parts of what they're looking for and you're ready to learn and you're ready to go for it, there's no harm in applying for it. The worst thing that happens when you apply is they say no.
Other than the pen tool and Actions, what other tool in Photoshop comes to mind that pops out right away like game changer?
I think Liquify is a really important one. Liquify definitely helps move things a lot. I feel like learning Stamp Tool was a pretty big game changer.
Mm-hmm. The clone stamp panel and all the...
Yeah, there's a lot of little things in that tool that can really help you.
Well, Katie, thank you so much. It was an honor. You're welcome. It was an honor and a pleasure having you on Adventures in Retouching. Where can people find you, or any plugs or any links, websites?
The biggest one would be my Instagram, which is KA Illustrations. That's where I'm most active. It falls off a little bit during the semesters when I'm crazy with work, but then I tend to update after the semester. So, but yeah, I can be reached there.
Katie, thank you so much. This was so good and so valuable and fun, and we got to talk together.
Yeah,
And,
thanks for having me.
You're welcome. For everyone watching, leave comments. Let us know what you found informative and helpful and valuable. If you have any questions, I'll follow up. I'll go in. I'll answer. Any help you need, looking at resumes, portfolios, Adventures in Retouching. I'm Rob DiCaterino. Let me know. I'm here to help. Thank you so much.